My wife let her twin take her place for one night. Now neither of them will talk to me. I am a 30-year-old man, and the first thing that told me it was not my wife was the way she picked up the water glass. My wife holds a glass with her right hand, thumb high, pinky tucked. That night the hand was left, the wrist loose, the pinky free like a dancer's. The change was so small I almost let it slide. Then the perfume was wrong by a shade I could feel but not name. Not sweeter. Not stronger. Just wrong, like a color 2 tones off in a room you know by heart. We were at a fundraiser where people liked their names printed on walls. She stood next to me and smiled at strangers as if she had rehearsed their faces. She knew who my manager's wife was without being told. She remembered the charity director's first child's name. She laughed in the same rhythm as my wife but missed the pause my wife always leaves for me to breathe. Everyone saw a perfect couple. I felt a zipper teeth click inside my chest. I had felt odd things for weeks. My wife, Marie, had been tired in a way that shut rooms down. She said work ran late. She said her sister, Claire, needed help with a move, then with a new job, then with a sick friend. She said she would sleep at Claire's because the drive was easier. I said fine because the season at my job was heavy and I wanted to be the kind of man who trusts and does not tally hours. Trust is quiet when you have it. It is a fire alarm when you do not. I met Marie and Claire 3 years ago at a friend's barbecue. They were the kind of twins who looked like a mirror had a personality, same face, different temperature. Marie liked a plan. Claire liked a story. People mixed them up often. After a while I learned the small tethers. Marie keeps hair ties on her wrist, Claire loses them and borrows pens. Marie folds a napkin into a square, Claire crumples it and apologizes to the air. Marie walks straight to a door, Claire reaches for the frame first like she is greeting a house. Once you know, you cannot unsee. At the fundraiser, the woman beside me reached for the wrong frame. She touched the door jamb of a ballroom like it was an old friend. Later she cut a steak and the knife sat in her left hand for 3 bites before she remembered and switched. She said a phrase my wife never uses, something about making a night count, and I felt my stomach lift like an elevator stops too soon. I kept moving because the evening was a river with guests floating on schedules, and I was supposed to be one of them. When the speeches ended, people drifted toward the bar. I said we should head home because I had an early meeting. She agreed too fast, like she was relieved that the script was short. In the car she hummed a song without words. Marie hums actual songs and gets stuck on one line for days. The humming was a way to fill silence, not to share it. I checked the side mirror and met my own eyes and tried not to hate the man who notices things too late. We reached our building after 11. She stepped into the apartment and went straight to the bedroom, shoes still on. My wife never does that, she unties laces by the door with a sigh that sounds like relief. I stood in the hallway and listened. A zipper, a light bag hitting the chair, a whispered curse and then water running. I felt the heat flush to my face and then, strangely, leave me. Panic was a room, I did not have to stand in it. I went to the kitchen, poured water, and waited. She emerged in one of my wife's long t-shirts and said she had a headache and would sleep. Her eyes moved around my face like looking for a handle. I looked back and felt gentleness for a person who was not my wife but had my wife's face and was, for reasons I did not know, in my home. I said that I would sleep on the couch because the meeting was early and I didn't want to disturb her alarm. She nodded and looked grateful the way a person looks grateful when a risk did not explode. I watched her close the bedroom door with a careful hand. The latch clicked like a small truth. I sat there with the water and the envelope from the event, the one with the donation receipt, and tried not to invent a movie. There are loud explanations, betrayal, games, traps. There are quiet ones, illness, fear, a promise made in the wrong order. I wanted the quiet explanation so badly that my teeth hurt. Wanting does not make truth softer. I left my phone on the table and texted my wife one line asking if she was safe. The message showed as delivered, then stayed blue and still. I did not sleep. I watched the stripe of streetlight creep across the bookshelves and thought about the first time I understood the difference between the twins in a way that mattered. It was a winter night when Marie could not stop shaking after a long day, and I wrapped her in a blanket even though she hates being wrapped. She thanked me and said she needed to stand at the window instead. I let her stand. Claire would have sat and told a story to warm the room. I loved my wife's windows. I respected her weather. Loving someone is sometimes not touching the thing you want to fix. At 4 a.m, I heard the bedroom door. Light footsteps crossed to the hall. The apartment door opened and closed. The small chain we never use was set gently so it would not rattle. I stood up and went to the bedroom. The bed was made as if no one had lain there. The toothbrush in the cup was dry. The necklace my wife wears to big nights lay on the dresser, clasp fastened. Claire wears no necklace and says jewelry makes her neck itch. The shirt that had looked like my wife's favorite was not. It was a duplicate with a small logo on the inside seam where my wife would cut tags. My chest went hollow like a drum. I took a breath and went still. Stillness was the only thing I could control. I showered, dressed, and left for work before the sun moved up the buildings. I sent 2 more messages to my wife that I was here and that I loved her and that we would talk when she was ready. The first 2 were delivered. The third one did not send. A new text came in from an unknown number telling me to give space. It had a single initial at the end. It was Claire's. I worked through the day as if I had borrowed someone else's body. I answered emails, nodded at jokes, pretended I did not check my phone every 5 minutes. At noon our friend Marco sent a photo from the fundraiser. It showed me with a woman at my side. The caption said we looked strong. I zoomed in until the pixels broke. On her wrist was a thin white line where a friendship bracelet had once been. Claire has that line. Marie does not. The room spun in a slow, careful circle and set down again. After work I drove to the apartment Claire shares with a friend. I did not announce myself. I just stood on the street and looked at the lit windows and thought about how ridiculous it was to hunt a truth in shadows. I went home instead. The apartment smelled like coffee and something floral that was not ours. I opened Marie's drawer and saw her things exactly as she leaves them. I sat on the floor and held the corner of a scarf and let it anchor me to something that had not changed. By evening my phone was a chorus. My mother asked if everything was all right because my father had heard from an aunt that something odd had happened. Marie's mother sent a heart and then nothing. Claire's number sent one more message saying she was sorry, and then went silent. I tried Marie again and the message turned into a green bubble. Her phone was off or far. The quiet became a wall I could touch. I slept in the living room again and woke to the heavy ache of a day that must be lived anyway. The calendar showed a dinner at Marie's parents' home for her mother's birthday. I decided to go. Showing up felt like the only way to keep the story inside the room and not on the street. I arrived with flowers and a smile that felt like work. People were warm. People were careful. Claire was not there. Marie was not there. Her mother said both had the flu. Her father poured me tea and asked about the fundraiser. I said it was crowded. He nodded like he had not asked what he wanted to ask. I left early with a box of leftovers and a quiet that hummed. In the car I realized the leftovers were a message, food sent from a mother who did not know which child needed comfort first. I started the engine and drove to the river. I stared at dark water and saw the last 5 weeks as a string of small departures, missed calls, bags pre-packed, a second set of keys exchanged without comment. I had confused kindness with not asking. I had mistaken patience for wisdom. There is a time to step back for someone. There is a time to move closer and demand the light. I went home and wrote 2 letters. One to my wife. One to her sister. I told my wife that I knew about the switch and that I loved her enough to face the reason with her, whatever it was. I told Claire that the kindness I have for her as my wife's twin does not extend to being used like a piece of furniture in my own home. I slid the letters into envelopes and addressed them by hand. My handwriting looked 12 years old from the shaking. I slept with the envelopes on the table like talismans. In the morning, I texted Marie's mother to ask if she could pass the letters along. She replied that she would. She added that both daughters were staying with her and that it would be better if I did not come by. She wrote that she knew nothing, which meant she knew everything she was allowed to know. I thanked her and sat in the quiet. A day passed. Then another. The letters did not come back. My phone did not blink. The stillness became weight, then weather. On the third day, an email arrived from Claire's address with no subject line. It contained 5 sentences. She wrote that Marie had asked her to stand in for one night to help with a situation. She wrote that the plan was to tell me after. She wrote that my safety had never been at risk. She wrote that she was sorry. She asked for time. There was nothing else. No reason. No explanation. Just time, like time alone could put furniture back in place after someone rearranged it in the dark. My heart wanted to accept it because love is addicted to later. My head scraped against the wall of the fact, someone else wore my wife's face and crossed our threshold and lay in our bed and let me imagine my marriage was intact while the truth waited outside like weather I was not warned about. No intimacy had happened. That line matters. But deception is not a light thing you wash off in the morning. I read the email again and thought about all the stories that could sit behind 5 sentences. That night I opened our wedding album and traced the curve of Marie's jaw with my finger and remembered the exact moment I knew I would marry her. It was not big. She had fallen asleep on a bus with her head against the window and the city lights cut across her face like time-lapse, and I felt peace move through me like a tide. I chose her because she was home in a world that switched faces too often. Now the world had handed me another switch and told me to wait. I fell asleep on the couch with my hand on a photo and woke up with my palm aching like I had been holding something that did not want to be held. I decided on one action. I packed a small bag. I left a note on the kitchen table saying I would stay with my brother for a week so that the apartment would not feel like a courtroom. I wrote that I loved her and I would come back when I knew which room we were supposed to meet in. I locked the door, slid the key in my pocket, and walked down the stairs into a morning that looked ordinary to everyone except me. I arrived at my brother's apartment and put the bag on the floor. The sound it made felt heavy and final. I told him that I needed a couch and quiet. He said the couch was mine and he did not need the details yet. I sat and breathed the smell of someone else's life, laundry soap and coffee and gym shoes, and let it settle my nerves. In other people's spaces, your problems shrink for an hour. Then they grow back to their true size. On the second day at my brother's, I received a message from an unknown email address. The subject line was a date and time. The body was one paragraph that read like it had been rewritten 20 times. It said that hospital tests had overlapped with the fundraiser night. It said that Marie had been scheduled for a biopsy the next morning and had been advised to avoid stress and crowds the night before. It said she had panicked at the idea of letting me down during a work night that mattered to me. It said she asked Claire to step in only for the public portion and to leave early. It said the plan had been to tell me after the results when everything was less frightening. It said the results were still pending. It ended with a line that said they were sorry for hurting me while trying to protect me. I read it a dozen times and felt my body move from anger to fear so fast I had to sit down. Fear makes you want to forgive anyone for anything because you are bargaining with the air. I pressed my hands to my face and let the cold skin pull me back to center. I knew I loved Marie more than whatever version of pride had kept me together the last days. I also knew that love without trust is a hallway with no doors. I needed both. I wrote back and said I wanted to be with her for the results, no matter what they were. I said secrecy multiplies pain. I said I could handle fear if fear was the truth on the table. Minutes later, Marie's mother replied from the same account and said that the results would be available on Thursday and that she would tell Marie I had asked. She said Marie needed calm. She did not say I was invited. The room felt smaller. Wednesday passed like a slow boat. I went to work because work keeps the brain from chewing itself. I arranged to take Thursday morning off. I ironed a shirt I did not need to iron and stood there watching steam climb like a harmless ghost. I realized how much of marriage is logistics around pain, rides to appointments, soup in the fridge, chargers packed, softness measured like medicine. I wanted to do the logistics. I also wanted not to be managed like a guest. Thursday morning arrived gray and unhelpful. I waited by my phone like a teenager again. At 10, a message landed, a short line from Marie's mother saying that the results were benign and that they were all relieved. I put the phone down and let relief rush in with the speed of a wave that has waited for miles to break. Then it receded and left a stinging salt on everything it touched. Benign meant we were safe. It did not explain the decision to switch faces instead of canceling a night and letting truth be messy. I sent a message back that I was thankful and ready to come by with lunch. Silence stretched so long I could hear the fridge hum. At noon the same account replied that today was a rest day and that weekend might be better. I walked for an hour and counted steps because numbers are easy when hearts are not. When I came back, a new email waited from Claire's personal address. She wrote that she could not look me in the eye yet. She wrote that she had stood in my living room and saw my life with her sister and felt a kind of grief that scared her. She wrote that she loved her sister and always would, and that she also loved the parts of our home that reminded her of childhood and safety, and that the mix had made her reckless. She wrote that she had left before I woke because she had almost told me the truth with tears and did not want to spill panic on top of panic. She wrote that she asked for time because she was trying to forgive herself for saying yes to a role that was never hers. There was no mention of romance. There was no suggestion of anything physical. There was only shame loud enough to fill a page without adjectives. I sat with that for a long time and realized a hard thing: I had been seeking a villain to balance the scale of my humiliation. The story wanted a clean blame. The truth was a mess of love and fear and family habits. Marie had tried to protect me from worry before a career night. Claire had tried to protect Marie from collapsing under the weight of a decision. I had tried to protect everyone by not asking hard questions for weeks. We had all chosen protection over honesty. The bill arrived with interest. That night I wrote a letter to Marie that did not try to be pretty. I said I understood the fear that drives people into bad choices. I said I did not understand why she did not let me carry that fear with her. I said the switch had cut something in me that would take time to mend, even with good news and even with explanations. I said I needed to hear from her voice, not intermediaries, why she could not speak to me now that danger had passed. I said I loved her. I said love is not a cloak for anything, it is a light, and I wanted the light back. 2 days later, I received a short voicemail from Marie. Her voice sounded like someone going downstairs in the dark. She said she was relieved and exhausted and embarrassed. She said the idea of facing me made her stomach twist because she had built the wrong plan and hurt me badly. She said she could not yet sit at our table without seeing the swap like a stain. She said she needed a week. She did not ask if I agreed. The line clicked into silence. I moved out of our apartment for real then, not forever, but enough to stop waking up in a hallway of ghosts. My brother helped me carry 2 suitcases and a box of files. He did not ask questions until we were done, then he asked one. He asked if I still wanted the life I had with Marie. I said yes. I said I wanted it with the doors propped open and the lights on. He nodded like that made sense in any language. The week stretched. I went to work. I cooked simple food. I watched my phone. At the end of it, an email arrived from Marie's own address. She wrote a long account of the weeks I had felt pass strangely. She had found a lump. She had frozen. She had told Claire before me because Claire was the person she knew would move quickly without asking permission, and because she had wanted to spare me the days of waiting. She admitted that sparing me was also sparing herself from seeing fear in my eyes. She wrote that she had chosen the fundraiser as a place she could not manage while fearing results. She had asked Claire to go, to stand in the crowd, to move people along, to make sure I did not feel abandoned. She had planned to tell me after the appointment, with facts in place, so that she could apologize with news in her hands. She wrote that when she heard the doctor say the word benign, she cried from relief and horror at the same time. She wrote that she had avoided me because every step toward me felt like walking through her worst decision. She asked if there was a path back. She did not paint it. She did not bargain. She just asked if there was a road we could walk that was not built on pretending it had not happened. I read it twice. I thought about the couch, the glass, the left hand, the water running at 4 a.m. I thought about the way love and fear live in the same room and swap seats when no one watches the door. I wrote back and said yes, but slowly. I said truth first, then plans. I said couples therapy, even if we hated the word, because we had proven we were not good at this in a vacuum. I said boundaries with Claire until the three of us could name what had happened in the same words. I said our apartment would need new habits. I said we would meet in a public place, in daylight, with small talk allowed and big talk scheduled. Marie agreed. She picked a quiet cafe on a corner where we had never been, which felt right, like standing on new tile after a flood. She arrived in a gray sweater and no makeup and looked like a person, not a performance. We talked about appointments and fear and the exact moment she chose the switch. We did not touch for the first hour. It was the tax we paid for stepping into a serious room. She said she had imagined me hating her. I said I had imagined her not needing me. We looked at each other and saw the smaller truths, two people who loved badly for a month. We began therapy. The counselor had soft eyes and hard questions. She asked about our families. I talked about a father who thinks calm equals cold. Marie talked about a household where people fix things before naming them. We traced the habit lines from those rooms to our living room. We said the words deception and protection out loud enough times that they lost some poison. We set ground rules about Claire: no unannounced visits, no requests that crossed the line between help and replacement, no private plans that involved my household without me in the room. Claire wrote to me and apologized again. She said she would respect the new boundaries without needing to agree with them in her heart. She said she wanted us to succeed and that her job now was to step back. She sent Marie a separate message about seeing a counselor herself. She wrote to me that she missed us as a trio at Sunday dinners and that she would sit out a while. I respected her for making the decision before anyone forced it. Back at the apartment, certain objects became symbols whether we liked it or not. The long t-shirt she had borrowed lived at the bottom of a drawer until we finally bagged clothes for donation and let it go. The water glass in the kitchen cabinet looked like a neutral thing and then like a trigger and then like glass again. The bedroom became ours again slowly, not by magic but by cleaning and new sheets and the rule that nothing enters this room with a secret attached. People around us learned in pieces. Some think we had a fight about money. Some think we consider moving. No one needs the full map. My mother asked if we were all right. I said we were working. She said work is love spelled another way. My brother asked if the couch was still mine if needed. I said I planned not to need it. He said the offer stands. The world turned and found its old speed. Not everything heals. I still catch myself scanning Marie's left hand when she reaches for a cup. She still checks my face when I enter a crowded room. We both flinch when the phone rings from an unknown number. We both notice when Claire's name appears in a group chat and let the message sit before we answer. We treat time like a living thing that needs care. 2 months after the results, Marie invited me to her follow-up appointment. I went and sat in the plastic chair and listened to the doctor say the same calm words and felt the old fear tap me on the shoulder and then leave. We walked out and bought bread and stood on a corner chewing warm pieces and not talking. That silence felt like sunlight. Afterward we met Claire in a park at a table under a tree we chose because it felt ordinary. We spoke about small things first. We agreed on practical rules. We said that the three of us would not erase a month by pretending it was a misunderstanding. We would name it when it tried to sneak into a joke or a plan. Claire cried once and apologized for that too. Marie took her hand and kept it there. I watched them and felt the deep, clean ache of being a witness to the relationship that existed before me and will exist after me. Marriage is not ownership. Family is not a merger. Love is not insurance against bad judgment. It is simply the decision to keep facing the same direction after a storm and to call the weather what it is. We are not done. Some days are easy. Some days the couch looks like an exit. On hard days, I take out the first email with the 5 sentences and remind myself what fear does when it thinks it is protecting us. On easier days, I take out the letter I wrote to Marie with the line about light and feel how true it still is. Light shows dust. Light shows faces. Light also shows the way home. My wife let her twin take her place for one night. Now neither of them will talk to me. The night turned a life I trusted into a hallway of mirrors. The mirrors did not win. We are walking carefully past them, not smashing them, not decorating with them, just noting where they stand so we do not walk into them again. The apartment is quieter now. The water glass is just a glass. The bed is just a bed. The door is just a door we both open, slowly, with our own hands.
Follow me for more stories.